The Torah tells us that at the age of 15, Ya'akov Avinu recognized that Esav, his brother, was unfit to become the leader of the Jewish people. So what he did was he took advantage of the avelus of his grandfather, Avram Avinu, who had died, and Yitzchak was sitting Shiva, and Yaakov was preparing the traditional meal for the mourners, and Esav came back from the field, right, doing his thing. He had already gone off the derech, was going his own way. He was pillaging, raping, murdering, all kinds of stuff, and he was exhausted. He came back totally exhausted and famished. So Yaakov, realizing the opportunity, and Esav wanting the food, he made a deal. And that was the famous sale of the Bechor. That from that point onward, even though Ya'akov Avinu had been conceived first, but we don't know things like that because you have to be a prophet, so really he was the Bechor, but he was born second. And as a result of that, Esav was born the Bechor. But now Yaakov technically bought the rights of the firstborn, and they went their different ways. And this goes on for many decades. Finally, later on in life, Yitzchak is coming close to the end of his life, and he decides he wants to give the brachas to whom he thinks is the leader of the Jewish people, who's Rui, who's deserving, because Yitzchak is did. Yitzchak he goes according to the strict letter of the law, and since Esav was born first, even though he must have known that Esav was a Russian and doing things he shouldn't do, which is why he had to go into a mitzvah of kibbutz aim to prepare the food, because maybe the bracha would change, and there's a lot of story behind all of this. But anyhow, the Rivka realizes it's not going to happen, that Esav is not going to live up to the qualifications to be the leader of the Jewish people, so she convinces Yaakov to dress up as Esav and to deceive his father, her husband, and to get the brachas, which, Yitzchak is fine with in the end, but Esav is not. And as the Torah tells us, that Esav, cries twice, one for the loss of the Bechor, one for the fact that he lost the brachas now, and he accuses Yaakov of being a tricker, right, of trickery, even though the second time for sure, the first time he actually bought it, but Esav is Esav. And as a result of this, Yaakov is forced to go into Geulah. He's forced to go into exile because Esav wants to murder him. Rivka knows this through Nevuah, Ruach HaKodesh, Rashi points out, and therefore she arranges, she finds a pretext to send Yaakov to Padan Aram, Mesopotamia, to her uncle's house, to his uncle's house, to her brother's house, who's Lavan the Arami, right, the one who wanted to kill us in the end, but he seems safer for the moment than Esav. And Yaakov packs up, gets the bracha, says goodbye to his family, runs off to Mesopotamia. And along the way, he realizes he passed Har HaMori. He left Eretz Yisrael without actually stopping to daven in the place of Ikeda, the place of the future Har HaBayis, so the Temple Mount with the base of Mikdash, but the Mikdashes, all three but the Mikdashes will be built. The first one, the second one, during history as we know it, and the third one, Bezrat Hashem, coming Yemos HaMashiach, should happen very soon. And he decides to go back. He wants to daven. He wants to pray there. Chas v'chalil, to go all the way. It's like coming to Israel on a trip from Chutz La'aretz and not stopping at the Kotel. How can you not stop at the Kotel? The Kotel is like the Makam of the base of Mikdash. It's where the Shechina is sure it resides there, and then all the Shefa goes out to the rest of the world from the Kotel. So therefore he goes back, and the miracle happens that Kodesh Baruch Hu shortens the derech for him, makes it a much shorter journey than physically it should have been. And he goes back there, and Hashem decides he wants Yaakov to sleep there. So therefore the sun sets very early, Yaakov davens Mariv, and he sleeps. And he goes to bed, and he has his dream. And the famous dream of the Malachim going up the ladder and down the ladder. And then he wakes up, it's an awesome dream, phenomenal dream, right? And he wakes up, and the next morning he says the most remarkable thing, right? It says V'yikatz Yaakov, he had woken from his dream, Mishnaso, V'yomer achein yesh Hashem b'makom hazeh, v'anoichi lo yadati. He says, God is in this place and didn't know it. What do you mean didn't know it? I mean, this is the place of the Kedah. This is the place you came back to because you knew this is the ideal place to daven. If you thought that God wasn't here, what's the point of coming back to Har HaBayis over here? Right? The Yirah. Right? He was terrified. He was very afraid. The Omar, and he said, Ma'noira hamakom hazeh. This is an awesome place. Ein ze ki im beis elukim v'zeh shar hashemayim. This is none other than the house of God and the gate of Shemayim, the gate of heaven. I mean, it's a pella. This is a chiddush to Ya'akov Avinu. I mean, this is why you came back in the first place. Or, you're a Nafi. You know these things, and your father and your grandfather. This is not a secret to you. But he says that. And even more peculiar is that now it says V'yashkem, he wakes up, he gets up, and actually he already woke up, but he gets up now, right? V'yashkem Ya'akov Aboker, gets up in the morning, V'yikach es ha'even asher sam v'rishosav v'yasem osam v'tzeva v'yitzok shemen al rosha, right? He makes a monument to the place over there and anoints it with oil, and also on his head as well, because it turns out this is very miraculous oil that is tied back to Ma'aseh Bereshis, and will be tied to all the miracles of the oil all through history, including the one of Hanukkah, but that's another shir. Yikra es shema makamahu Beis Kel, right? So he calls this place Beis El, right? This is the base of Beis El. Ulam, luz. Shema ir lerishona, right? The Yidor Yaakov, this is the part that's unusual, right? Because of this whole dream, he wakes up and he makes a neder. He takes a vow, right? The response to his dream is a statement of this is Beis Elokim and Shar Shemaim, and he makes a vow, and it says, V'yidor Yaakov neder lemor, he says, Im yihyeh Elohim imadi, if God will be with me, right, ushmarani b'derech, and protect me along this way, asher anochi holech, right, that I'm going to Galus now if he'll be with me, v'nasani lechem le'achol uveged lilbosh, and he'll give me food to eat and clothing to wear, V'shalti v'shalom el beis avi, and bring me back to my father's house. V'haya Hashem li elokim. So then God will be my God. I mean, that's also a little peculiar because this is the Avos. This is an Avos. This is a forefather. So clearly Yaakov knew that God was God for him everywhere he went in the world, no matter what he got, whether you get clothing, don't get clothing. What kind of tanai is this? What kind of condition is Yaakov building into this vow? That, even we should know better not to make vows like this, because God is everywhere at all times, and no matter what he does to us or where he takes us and whatever we undergo, that we're supposed to be Techadamuna Gam Zilutov, it's all for the good. So what is Yaakov, what's his intention over here? What does he mean by this? That's one part of the story. Later on, right, he goes to Padan Aram, right, he meets Rachel, and he marries Leah first because of the whole trick, and then he marries Rachel after, then he gives birth to the Shvatim, and he finally makes his own money, and it comes time to go. It's got to go later on, right? And the Torah tells us that that Lavan went out to shear his sheep, and while he was gone, he decides he has to leave. He's got to go quickly, and he doesn't even bother to say goodbye. And the actual lashon of the pasuk is V'yignov Yaakov es leiv Lavan. The Yaakov stole. That's the lashon of the pasuk. Not that Yaakov just simply ran away. It should be Vrach. He ran away, right? But it says V'yignov. He stole the heart of Lavan, Ha'arami, al b'li higidlo. Because he didn't tell him he was leaving. He didn't tell him he was fleeing. Here's Lavan out, shearing his sheep, and Yaakov quickly packs the whole family up, and he takes off without even saying goodbye. For 20 years of being by his father-in-law, it's unheard of. What was the problem? Was he afraid of Lavan, that he's going to cheat him some more? Well, he's already been cheating him all this time, and clearly Kosh Baruch was protected. Even Lavan points out that God's protected Yaakov the entire time. Is he physically afraid of Lavan? Well, I mean, why should up until now you've been living with him, and God has been protecting you, and why should it be any different from this point on? What did you see to make you concerned that maybe the protection wouldn't be there anymore? Furthermore, what difference does it make if you stay a few extra minutes and say goodbye? I mean, what do you lose by that? Just goodbye and you go. Why must it be? V'yivrachu v'chol asher lo v'yikam v'yavor es anar v'yasem es panav har hagilad. Right, he runs away and crosses the river and makes his way back to Israel. And eventually, Lavan catches up when he has a tremendous taina on Yaakov. And the Gentile world reading this, they don't look at it the way we look at it. They don't understand the midrashim the way we understand the midrashim and what they mean. But certainly, it's convoluted history. I mean, this is not the ideal situation. And there has to be some kind of mafterech, because as we said before, Maisa Avosam Labanim, whatever the forefathers they know and they do and they think, everything is calculated, and they rarely made mistakes. So if something seems out of place to us, It's because we're at a place and not them. So we have to understand what the difference is, what it is that we have to understand and know. So the key, obviously, is back at the beginning by the dream. Until that dream, Yaakov had a certain perspective. He ran away, he left home. He spent 14 years at the yeshiva, Hashem Ve'ever, we're told in the Medrash, to prepare himself to live with Lavan. And then he spends, the next 20 years, 14 years working for ostensibly Ruchel and Leah, and then eventually 6 more years to make some money before he goes back and to accumulate, somewhat of a fortune, for all important reasons. So we have to, somehow changed along the way the night that he had that dream. So it turns out that the chiddush of the dream was not that this is the base Elokim in Shar Shemaim. That Yaakov obviously knew before. The Medrash tells us that what happened was that night as Yaakov dreamed, he noticed that the angels of Eretz Yisrael that were accompanying him went up on the Sulam, right? And the ones from Chutz La'aretz were coming down the Sulam to accompany him into diaspora. That's what he was able to see in his dream. Why was it so important? So the Sefer Tuva Aris explains, because up until this point in time, Ya'akov Avinu assumed, like all of us would assume, that there's no difference between Eretz Yisrael and Mesopotamia and Iraq and Iran and Canada and America and England in terms of Shar Shemaim. Everything goes right up to Shemaim. There's a gate to heaven everywhere you go. You look in the sky is just as blue, or black it is Eretz Yisrael as is the rest of the world. And you assume that if you're davening someplace else other than Eretz Yisrael, the tefillas and the kedusha from the learning goes right to Shemaim. Why not? You're benching, why not? Go straight to Shemaim. I mean, there's no question that kedusha of Eretz Yisrael is different. There's no question that if you walk Daled Amos in Eretz Yisrael, you're going to get Schar L'Mabah. These are all separate issues. The land, there's no, the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael is clearly much, much greater than anywhere else in the world. But in terms of tefillas going to Shemaim, it should be the same anywhere else in the world. That would be the assumption. That's the assumption today. That's what people assume today, all through history. What Yaakov discovered that night, and that's the important point, that's the whole key to the entire issue, was that no, it's not true. There is no other Shar Shemaim. There's only one Shar Shemaim. And that's what Yaakov is saying. This is not a Shar Shemaim, as I thought it was before, but it's the Shar Shemaim. The only Shar Shemaim. There's only one gate to Shemaim, as the Tuva Aris points out, and that gate actually mirrors the borders of Eretz Yisrael. In fact, the Gemara in Chulin says that the Sulam, the ladder that the angels went up and down, was 8,000 parses. That's like 8,000 miles wide. Okay, it's very wide. Is that an exaggeration? It's just emphasized it was very big. So the Tuva Aris explains, B'Shem the Rizal, that the Sulam is actually the border of Eretz Yisrael. There's like a barrier, a spiritual barrier of Daled Amos wide, which is about 6 to 8 feet wide, that goes around the entire border, divinely designated border of Eretz Yisrael, and that's the Sulam. And inside that area, that goes straight to Shemaim. Outside that area, there's like a Kippah HaBarzel. There's like a an iron umbrella, so to speak, spiritually speaking, meaning, and this is the point, that all kedusha generated in the world by man, and all heavenly response from Shemaim back to man. For example, I daven to Hashem, please give me parnasa, and Shemaim decides to give me parnasa. That's a bracha coming back down into the world again. All of it, by definition, can only ascend and descend over Eretz Yisrael. That's why the Malachim had to descend over Eretz Yisrael and not outside of Eretz Yisrael or over every other country they might be residing over, because every nation, every country has its own angel, who's like the minister who's on behalf of that nation, that people. That's his job. He's designated to do exactly that. And the Shefa flows through him. But as it turns out, that every nation's angel is from the side of impurity, except for Israel, whose angel is Michael, really Kush Baruch Hu is the one looking over Israel, and the only one from the side of Kedusha. So the Chiddush that Yaakov got that night when he was sleeping, that he woke up with, and he responded to, he said, until now, basically, I thought that every place was a Shar Shemaim, so therefore, if I go to Padan Aram and I learn Gemara, and I bench, say Birchas Hamazon, or whatever I might possibly do to generate Kedusha, then that Kedusha, by definition, will go to Shemaim, like it always does in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, I don't have the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael to assist me, and I'm everywhere I'm walking Dalet Amos, I'm not getting the same mitzvah of Dalet Amos as you would Eretz Yisrael, but still in terms of Kedusha going to Shemaim, go straight up. So Yaakov woke up and he realized, no, this is catastrophic. All the Kedusha I generate in Chutzlart, in diaspora, says the Arizal, says Ya'akov Avinu, has to first travel horizontally to Eretz Yisrael, and then ascend over Eretz Yisrael, and when the Brucha comes back down to me, it comes down over Eretz Yisrael, and then goes out laterally to wherever I might possibly be. So aside from taking longer, so to speak, which is not necessarily the case because we're talking spiritual, but could be, there's no question it could be. But the main problem that Yaakov realized was that automatically the Kedusha I generate is going to feed the wrong side. It's going to feed the angel, and every angel who has to, the angel over the country I'm davening in will have to give it to the angel over the next country over, and every angel that's B'tzad Tumah, as we know before, because we said that even the koiches of evil, of Tumah, has to feed off the Kedusha. Even the impure forces only survive because of the holiness that they eat from, that they drink from. And we try to calibrate that in the world to keep it all in balance. But if I'm going to Chutzlar, says Yaakov, and I'm going to daven there, and I'm going to learn there, then all of a sudden the Kedusha I'm generating is going to feed the wrong side. And I am going to strengthen the klipos. I'm gonna be feeding the wrong side, my enemy. It's like living next to Esau. It's like, come get me, That's unacceptable. There's no way. It can't be, right? So, what does he do? He said, but I gotta go. I gotta go for two reasons. Number one, I'm being sent. Shemaim, it's obviously sending me because it's a shkacha prat, divine providence. I'm being forced out. I didn't choose this. I was minding my own business, sitting in my tents, learning Torah, and this whole thing got thrown on top of me. So, it's hashgacha pratis. God is sending me to Chutzlarts. I gotta go. My parents are sending me to Chutzlarts. A mitzvah of kibbut av v'eim. I gotta go. Ugh, it's a dilemma. What do? I go and I feed the klipos. I stay and I also feed the klipos because I'm doing an avera. He has an idea, a patent, right? He figured this is what I'm going to do. I will go, but I am going to schlep the Shechina with me. That's what's going to have to happen. The Shechina is going to have to go into Chutzlarts with me and protect the Kedusha, because I'm not going to stop learning. I'm not going to stop benching. I'm not going to stop doing mitzvahs over there. No way. So the Shechina will have to, this is beautiful, will have to extend the borders of Eretz Yisrael, spiritually speaking, because physically they are what they are, but to extend them spiritually, Ke'ilu, as if that when I'm in Chutzlarts, I still have the status of being in Eretz Yisrael because that's really where I want to be. I didn't want to live in the first place. My whole being and body and thought process is all tied to living there. I'm like, they dragged me out with wild horses over here. So therefore, I deserve to be back in the land. I didn't do the Avera, I did what I was told to do. So therefore, the Shechina has to protect me. And if the Shechina will come into Chutzlarts and protect me and take care of me, and that I'm not, and how will I know I'm being taken care of? I'm going to have food to eat. I'm going to have clothing to wear, right? And most important of all, I'll be protected from my enemies. And my Kedusha will be taken and gone right to Shemayim without too much going to the wrong side. That's Yaakov's patent. And it works. It works. And this concept is called, Kabbalistically, Shechina Bagalus, the Shechina in Galus, in exile. There's a lot of Kabbalah about this whole concept of Shechina Bagalus, but that's what Yaakov does. That's his idea. And it works so well that even though Lavan, normally, right, it says halachihi, that Esav's son is Yaakov, that Esav hates Yaakov, but love Dafka Esav, just almost anybody else hates us, whether they come from Esav, they come from Yishmael, they don't like us very much. And it's the way of the world that they want to destroy us. So, when Yaakov goes to Padan Aram, and he sees especially that Lavan is like an Arami who wants to kill him, and he can't, and not only can he not, but he's being forced to be civil, right? And his brothers-in-laws are being forced to be civil. Why? Because the Shechina is got their hand behind their back over here. No, you can't be mean to Ya'akov Avinu. He's my anointed, my special one, and he's doing everything right. He's here for the right reasons. So therefore, I'm protecting him. So two things happen. Anti-Semitism disappears. He's completely protected. He's able to not only survive, but he thrives there, physically and spiritually. Spiritually, he learns and davens and grows in mitzvahs and the whole thing, and the klippas don't get stronger. And then, on top of that, he even becomes a wealthy man. He gets married to a beautiful wife, actually four altogether, spiritually speaking, and he has 11 of the 12 shvatim, and he's doing fantastically good over here in Galus, and it's a golden era. He's just thriving, just making a killing over here. So, and all of a sudden, one day, everything changes. Everything changes. How does it change? It changes because basically, he comes home and he overhears his brothers-in-law speaking. Now, you have to understand, his brothers-in-law only existed because he existed. Why did he exist? Why did they exist? First we'll go back, right? Rachel is out tending the sheep because Lavan has no sons. Lavan says, I know it's because of you I have sons. The brucha that came with you to my house also affected me and gave me sons. So they owe their existence to Ya'akov Avinu, to their brother-in-law. I mean, they wouldn't exist otherwise. And they have the chutzpah to say, Yaakov is getting rich off our father. It's a blood libel. Blaming us once again financially, just like on Occupy Wall Street and all these protests all through history. The Jews are the ones with the money. The Jews are the ones who are being greedy. The Jews are the ones who taking off everybody else and pillaging. The things they do to us, they accuse us of doing back to them, and of course it's just the opposite in the end. But what takes the cake, so to speak, is immediately after that the Torah tells us that Lavan did not look at Yaakov the same way he did before. Right? The thing that, V'yar Yaakov es panei Lavan, v'hinei einenu imo kismol shilshom. He noticed, he looked at Lavan and noticed the face of Lavan was not the same it was yesterday and the day before. 20 years of living with Lavan, there must have been some days, people have their moods. They have their temperaments. They lose money in the stock market and they're not so happy anymore. Maybe he had indigestion, bad breakfast. Maybe he had a fight with his wife. Who knows? There's a billion reasons why, or at least a million reasons why, somebody might not be happy, might not smile, somebody he might possibly like. But Lavan, up until now, apparently that wasn't the case, because Yaakov said the very fact that Lavan was able to look at him a little bit less nicely than he did in the past was reminded him of halachihi, Esav Seine es Yaakov, meaning that why has Lavan and his family been nice to me up until now? Not because they're civil, not because they're nice people, not because they really want to see me, to succeed in life, even though I am his son-in-law and I'm married to his daughters and my children are his grandchildren. No, he would wipe me off wipe me off the face of the earth in 2 seconds if he could. And take the grandchildren, take the wives back, whatever. He doesn't like me. I'm a Jew. Doesn't want me. Why has he been nice to me up until now the entire time? Because the Shekhinah acted as a barrier, as a wall between me and him, a spiritual barrier, and it gave him the capacity that while I was there, that he should be nice to me and civil to me the entire time. I never mistook for 1 second. I mean, we do mistake these all through history. We assume that people are nice to us because they're really nice to us. They're really quite civil, even though history has proven over and over and over again the most civil friends of the Jewish people in the right time, the right way, or rather the wrong time or the wrong way, can actually become the most deadly enemies of the Jewish people. And Yaakov knew that. He lived with the reality of it every single day. So finally, when his brothers-in-law spoke, terribly about him and accused him falsely, and then he saw Lavan not being as nice as he was the day before, so that's when Yaakov realized the Shekhinah was moving on. That was the Siman Muvhak. The Shekhinah was moving on. If I'm protected because of the Shekhinah, and I stop being protected, it means the Shekhinah is no longer protecting me. If I did something wrong, maybe perhaps to warrant that, fine, I could blame it on myself. If it turns out that I'm doing everything right, and the Shekhinah is moving on, and anti-Semitism comes back, and finances become, tricky, and the economy falls up, whatever it was that allowed us to thrive in the first place and to survive, to be safe, starts to become weak somehow. That is the sign the Shekhinah is moving on. Maybe perhaps another ghost. We didn't always go right back there to Israel. There's times we went from one country to another country. Maybe it moved on to another country. From Europe to America, the Shekhinah moved on clearly because we were successful to some degree in Europe, and then the Holocaust happened, and we moved to other parts of the world, became successful there. The Shekhinah obviously was there protecting us and allowing us to thrive. But Yaakov realized that the moment that he saw cracks in the wall and water begin to leak through, that the dike was no longer holding back the anti-Semitism and the natural order of the Gentile reaction to the Jewish people, and that and today the financial markets are affected, and the Jewish economy, so to speak, is slowed down. So that, he says, is a simon that the Shekhinah is moving on, and therefore I better move on too. And that's why he has to run away. That's why he leaves without even saying goodbye. Not because he didn't want to be polite, not because he was physically afraid of Lavan, but if the Shekhinah is moving on, and I stay even a few minutes more than the Shekhinah did, it means the Kedusha I am generating from this point onward, through my benching, through my bruch after the bathroom, whatever I'm doing, and just my thinking in Torah, which is Ya'akov Avinu. He's Ish Emes, Ish Torah. He's always involved in Torah, so he's always generating Kedusha. It means automatically it's no longer protected like it was back in Eretz Yisrael. It's like the borders of Eretz Yisrael, they contracted, and I'm now stuck outside of them in Chutz La'aretz, and I'm back to square one of my concerns, where I'm now feeding the Klipos through the Kedusha. And how do I know that's the case? Because you see the Klipos get stronger. If the enemies of the Jewish people are getting stronger, it's because the Klipos are getting more Kedusha than they should be. There's only one place to get it from, this is the Jewish people living in the diaspora. Because the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael goes straight to Shemayim. The Klipos can't get to it. It's another story, what's going on in Eretz Yisrael. It's another discussion. But the Shekhinah, first of all, never leaves Eretz Yisrael. We're told by the Medrash. And the Kedusha, the opening is there, so therefore the Kedusha goes straight up. But in Chutz La'aretz, once the Shekhinah moves on, then they can feed the Klipos and strengthen the side of Tumah, and our enemies become stronger, and they're able to pressure us and take things away from us, like land, and to make our life more difficult and more difficult and more difficult, till eventually, Chas v'Shalom, it becomes so difficult that we wonder why we never left in the first place, once we began to see things change for the worse. Ya'akov Avinu was the last person. I mean, there are obviously people over history who were able to see that. But Yaakov is someone who clearly understood this, lived by those rules, and he worked perfectly and seamlessly according to them, which is why he was able to live with his life, to live with his wives and his family and his parnas, his money, his fortune, unscathed, unattacked, unaffected by love, because he knew to leave when the Shekhinah moved on. The only question is that why does the Shekhinah move on? Why does a galus come to an end in the first place? Well, why do we go into galus anyhow? The answer is, as the Gemara says, that the whole point of the Jewish people going into galus is to redeem the netzotzim that are there. Now, in ideal circumstances, when things are working the way they have to work, those sparks are brought to us in Eretz Yisrael. But if sometimes, in certain occasions, certain reasons, for historical, there's a certain historical imperative, we're forced to go into galus and to get those sparks. When Yaakov married Rochel and Leah, and then had the Shvatim, he was being paid in Etzotze Kedusha from Padan Aram. And when he took the money, when he earned the money by Lavan over there, and he became a wealthy man, everything he took and all that he consumed all through the years to do his mitzvahs was just being paid in Etzotze Kedusha. He was constantly redeeming sparks. And as the Lashon points out, the Shekhinah goes with us into galus to help us in that process of redeeming the sparks. That's why it's there, to help us to fulfill that mission of being paid in Etzotze Kedusha, redeeming, elevating, separating out from the Klipos and Etzotze Kedusha, and furthering the cause of redemption and the perfection of Ma'aseh Bereshis. That's the whole story of going to galus in the first place. But every place has a certain amount of tzotzim, certain amount of sparks that are relevant to the place itself, and those which the Jewish people are meant to redeem. When we go to some place, it's to redeem the sparks there. But the moment the Jewish people no longer have any more sparks in that particular place to redeem, the Shekhinah moves on. I'm only there, says the Shekhinah, to help you with your mission of being paid in Etzotze Kedusha, redeeming holy sparks. That's the whole reason why I'm there. If there's no reason to be here anymore, why do I want to be here? I want to be back in Eretz Yisrael, or at least at the next stage of galus, so we can get closer to the final redemption. You want to stay? It's on your own cheshbon. You take care of yourself. I'm moving on over here, okay? If you're in exile for a holy reason, for a reason the Torah sanctions, for a reason the Shemayim says, yeah, you got to be there for that right now. The Shekhinah is going to be with you, helping you to redeem holy sparks, and you will be protected. But if you're going to stay in exile longer than you have to, longer than the Shekhinah is going to, you're in danger. You're in danger for two reasons. One is because the Kedusha you're going to generate, as hard and as difficult as this sounds, and as to accept, but the Kedusha you're going to generate is going to go the wrong side and feed the wrong side, and the wrong side will get stronger and eventually more dangerous, and it comes right back on us again. Right back on us again. And Yaakov knew that, and as a result of that, he understood that the exile came to an end. Anti-Semitism revealed the Shekhinah moving on. The Shekhinah moving on revealed the Netzotzei Kedusha that were there to be redeemed by him were redeemed. In Parshas Lech Lecha, a very bizarre episode where Avraham, who's Mr. Kiruv, Mr. Outreach, he's the one who's trying to bring everyone back to the way of God. His own nephew, they come back from Mitzrayim, and they're both wealthy. And his own nephew says, we can't live together because there's not enough for the both of us. So I'll tell you what, says Avraham. Okay, I hear it. Fine. You go right, I go left. You go left, I go right. Something like that, right? And Lot is fine. And he's looking at Stom, says, nice place to go over there. And that's like the worst place to go spiritually. Physically, maybe it was nice, beautiful and all that. But that's like not the place you want to send your kids to yeshiva, that's for sure. And Avraham doesn't say boo. Doesn't say, no, don't go there. I changed my mind. Yeah, how about we both go right? You can go right and I'll a little more left, but don't go to Stom. Whatever you do, I'm spending all my time trying to get people out of Stom to change their way of living. Don't go to Stom. Avraham doesn't say anything. His own nephew goes down to Stom, and Avraham says, okay, see you, goodbye. Keep in touch. Eventually he has to go save him from the war, but doesn't say anything. The question is why? Why not? Why wouldn't Avraham say something? Give him some advice how to survive there spiritually. What's Avraham thinking over here? So the Al-Sheikh says, and history certainly proves the point, that we know, well, I'll start with the Arizal. The Arizal explains the holier the spark, the deeper is going to be the klippus, and the greater the battle they're going to have to fight over keeping it there, because the moment the greater sparks come out, they become great individuals, and they bring the redemption, and they end the tyranny of evil in creation. They know that. The Sitra Achra's whole existence depends upon the redemption not taking place. So he'll do whatever he can to interfere in the redemption process and make you believe you're redeeming yourself and doing whatever has to be done, but takes 10,000 years longer. So, Avraham knew, and the Gra says that he was Mashiach ben Yosef in his generation, and the job of Mashiach ben Yosef is to pave the way and prepare the way for Mashiach ben David. We may be still sitting here in exile waiting for Mashiach to come, but every generation thought we can do it now. Avraham wanted to continue with the Akedah because by doing so would have brought Yemos Mashiach now. He couldn't do it because the generation wasn't ready. But that's the thinking, that's the mindset. And he's thinking to himself, if David HaMelech is the future king of the Jewish people, says the Al-Sheikh, but history says, we know, and it means his soul is very deep in the klippus. And if I look around the world today, where is the klippus the deepest, so to speak? I mean, there's Tel Aviv over there, and there's there's Yafo, and there's this city and that city, and then there's Stom. And Stom is that's like the place that God wants to destroy eventually. That's like the main hangout, the main layer of the klippus. So Avram rightly figures out that must be where the Netzotzei of David HaMelech is being held captive. He's thinking, so how do I get that Netzotzei out of there? If I go to some place where I can get a job and work and get married to somebody, perhaps, whatever the case may be, I can bring the Netzotzei. But this is not Stom. Stom, they know who I am. My picture's in the post office, wanted, dead, not even alive, because he's the antithesis of Stom. So, can't go there. But it's got to get the spark up. Can't go there. Got to get the spark out. Can't go there. So Lot says, I'll go. So Avram says, that's interesting, Hashgacha Pratis. Lot, he's got enough of me in him that maybe he'll survive all this, but enough of himself that maybe the people of Stom will accept him. And what happens is that exactly as perfectly he could be, he goes down to Stom, he marries a Stom woman, which Avram is not going to do, and he has children through this woman, and he's got a couple of daughters. Some won't go up because their husbands don't even see what's going to go on. They laugh at Lot. When the angel tells him the place will be destroyed, he gets out with two unmarried daughters. Of course, one of them eventually becomes the mother of Moab, from whom eventually Ruth comes, and Ruth eventually converts, and it's just the path of the Nitzotz of David HaMelech, the spark of David HaMelech, making its way, surreptitiously out of the klippas, and winding its way till the klippas can't see what's going on. Otherwise, the moment they realize what's happening, they're going to stop the whole process. So, what can possibly come from Lot and his daughters? What a terrible relationship. This is great, says the klippas. This is right down our alley. Nothing could obstruct the final redemption, because that God of ours, he likes the pure stuff. He likes things happening mamash pure. He does, but he's got ways of making it look impure to fool the Sitra Achra. So somehow, some way, Lot's daughters, whatever the process, we'll find it later on. The main thing is historically that's who gives birth to Rus, and eventually Rus gives birth to David HaMelech, who's the ancestor of Mashiach. The history of a Nitzotz, of a very holy and Kaddish Nitzotz, and that's what we're doing in Galus. We're there to be paid in Nitzotz Kedusha. When the job is finished, it becomes time to go. Because the Shekhinah is going to go. We have no other reason to be there. We're not simply biding our time because we're sitting in some waiting room waiting for a bus that's never going to come, or come too late. But we're there for a very specific reason, and that's the mistake that we make. Geulah barachamim means knowing this story, knowing this history, knowing the mission of the Jewish people, why we go to exile, what we're supposed to be doing there, and how to get out when we finally realize the job is over, knowing we're only there temporarily. The same way that a contractor comes in to build a house. He knows he's only there temporarily. If he moves into the house, the police will come later on. It's not practice. It's not going to happen unless it's his own house. You're there temporarily. You're there on a job. You're fixing something. You're fixing the world. Ideally speaking, we should be fixing from Eretz Yisrael. We lost that schus until Mashiach finally comes. Eretz Yisrael is the place that we belong, because that's where all the Nitzotzim have to end up. So Kibbutz Galius, says the Leshem, the ingathering of the exile, the famous ingathering of the exile, which the Gemara says is as difficult as Ma'aseh Bereshis, if not more difficult, because people are going to refuse, is also the ingathering of the Nitzotzi Kedusha from around the world to Eretz Yisrael, so they can ascend over Eretz Yisrael to Shemayim. Yaakov understood that, Yitzchak understood that, Abraham understood that, the greatest of our leaders understood that, and they were responsive. They worked in that. That was their priority. Whatever they did, that was their main thinking. We're there to be paid and redeem and elevate and to separate out Nitzotzi Kedusha, and to know that if you're going to be doing this in the diaspora, there'll come an end. The exile will come to an end. The clock that we follow, that we live by, especially in the diaspora, is not the one on our wrist and the one on the wall. It's the one that monitors how many sparks are being redeemed, because the moment those sparks are out at that specific place, then by definition, it's time to move on. To where? To where? Well, after Europe, there were still the four corners of the earth. We had to go to, because we weren't Zoichet yet, to go back to Israel. But today we've been there, done that. There's no place else to go but back to Israel. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, in 1948 onward, fantastic miracles take place in the Holy Land. We turn the desert into lush, gardens, and we succeed physically and even spiritually, because the Bate Midrashos and Bate Knesios and the communities, we got a lot of problems left, because, as we said before, we're not Zoichi yet to Achishena, but there's a combination of Achishena Bita taking place. But more than that, it's because history's coming to a close, because all the Nitzotzim are making their way back to Israel, and more importantly, the ones in Israel have to be redeemed. So even people who don't seem to be worthy to be here and to redeem them are having success in Israel. This is the place it's going to be. And that's what David HaMelech said. He concluded by saying, or gave to us for generations down the road, because he knew we'd be missing the point. He knew without prophets, we'd be involved in prophets. Right? The first prophets are spelled Profphets, right? The ones of yesteryear. And the prophets instead were involved with are Profits, the ones from Wall Street and around the world, because we're looking at the money, not the Nitzotzi Kedusha, that we're supposed to be redeeming. He said through that. Atatakun terchem Tzion, he says, you will get up and you will show mercy to Tzion. Ki yesach hanikiva moed, because it's the time to favor her. Eretz Yisrael, the Jewish people, kiva moed, the appointed time, the time of Geulah will have come. What does the mercy depend upon? Ki ratzu avdechas of neha, vesafra yechanenu. That's the passage that most people don't pay attention to. The last two dafim of the Gemara Kesuvos are talking about the rabbis of the Mishnah and the Beis Hamikdash who spent a lot of time thinking about how to fulfill those words, including rolling in the actual dust itself to show their love for the dust of Israel. Just because it's a geographic location? Yeah, also, because that's where the souls of the Jewish people all come from. Just because it was given to the forefathers? Absolutely, it's also very important. But more than that, because we understand that's where all the Netzotzim belong, or at least the ones that are relevant to Geulah and the Jewish people, and that's the last place we're going to have to redeem the final Netzotzi Kedusha to make the place become what it has to become for the sake of welcoming back the third Beis Hamikdash and the Shechina and bringing the world to its level of perfection it has to get to. To do the barachimim means to take the initiative, to understand what the priorities of the Jewish people are, how to go about fulfilling them, and how we can play a role as partners with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, the redemption process, and through that merit a redemption barachimim.